Steven, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I've actually seen you on some YouTube commercials that I get from time to time. So I believe it's like the exact same background that you have right now.
Yeah, more often than not, this is a corner of the conference room, and I use this background a lot. A lot of people think it's fake, and one thing I want to do, like when people use a fuzzy background, I want to make a fuzzy shoe, so one day I can fake them out and like reach back and pull an actual
I like
fuzzy
that.
shoe out of the fuzzy background.
Be like the
A green screen shoe.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
And behind you, for those who are listening, is your wall of shoes and your
No, it's a wall of Xero shoes.
Xero Shoes.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
There's no
It's
shoes
not
there.
just random shoes. That'd be silly if I just had random shoes behind me.
exactly. It's Xero Shoes in that your company is zero, not that there's no shoes back there.
Or if they're listening,
Well,
they don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. And so we're Xero, and the implication is that it's basically feeling. It's funny, when I started the company, I called it Invisible Shoes because I started it like on a whim, and I needed a name, and that's what I thought of. And there was a marketing guy that I met. He was like the head of marketing for a billion-dollar brand, and we were introduced to each other. And the first thing he said to me when we got together, he goes, "Hey, I can see them." I said, "Yeah, but it feels like nothing." He goes, "I can see them. You can't use that word." I went,
Yeah,
"God damn it."
exactly. Yeah, that would be even more confusing if we were like, there's a wall of invisible shoes behind you.
Yes.
How'd you pull off that
We
technology?
sell those along with the Emperor's New Clothes. It's a whole, you can get totally outfitted in one spot.
I mean, I go straight to Wonder Woman.
Yeah, exactly. The invisible
Oh
jet.
yeah.
There you go. All right, Steven, welcome to the show. Let's talk about your product, your company, your life, and everything else. So, Xero Shoes. If anybody, well, actually, you can just explain it. What are you all about? And
Wait. Why don't we even get beyond that? Because,
Okay.
all of us have read Born to Run, or a lot of us have.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where it starts, it proselytized the idea of ground contact and barefoot running and the natural running and stuff like that.
I'm gonna
Did you
pause.
come
You know
in
what?
before that or after?
Well, right around then, but I want to pause. It's really funny. The book doesn't actually endorse barefoot running, but that's what people think that it does. It talks about the research, including research that Dan Lieberman from Harvard did, where he took runners from Africa who were barefoot and then put shoes on them and showed how it changed their gait and increased impact forces. But it doesn't. But people think of it as a barefoot book, but it's really a book about the Tarahumara and about just natural movement. That part.
Yeah.
So we came into being in that same era is the best way to put it. In fact, we used to joke early on. So I launched Xero Shoes, then again Invisible Shoes in November 2009, and we used to joke that for the next year and a half, Chris McDougall was our unofficial marketing department.
Yeah.
Because anytime he's out doing a book signing, we'd see a big bump in sales. And I started doing a thing where I would go to bookstores and put our business cards in copies of the book Born to Run.
Good guerrilla marketing. I like
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
You're going to want these.
Well,
I mean, that
it
was
was
the
inspi-
height of it, though. Whether or not he was
the
selling
height,
it.
well, the height was actually like mid 2010, and what happened? So what happened? It was very interesting. From 2009 through the middle of 2010, the big shoe companies were saying, "Hey, barefoot is going to kill you. If you run barefoot, you're going to step on hypodermic needles and get Ebola. Your kids won't get into college. Your car won't start. Your mortgage rate's going to go up." I mean, it was ridiculous. By the end of 2010, though, a bunch of these companies were making shoes they were calling minimalist or calling barefoot that were really nothing of the sort. And so 2010, 2011 is when things seemingly peaked, maybe even into 2012. And then it was not too long after that when the lawsuit against Vibram, which was also massively misrepresented, kind of slowed things down. And it didn't. People think that there was a peak and then it crashed, but there wasn't. There was just a rapid acceleration followed by slower acceleration.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I guess where I see it as like a peak was that it was being jumped in by, like, you had the Saucony Hattori, you had Merrill had all their, their
The trail
lineup.
glove,
Yeah.
and there was the Kinvara,
Even
and
New
the
Balance got into it.
the
And
Minimus. Yep.
Yeah.
But
So-
you know what? But again, Irene Davis, when she was at Harvard, did research showing that most of those shoes that they called barefoot or minimalist were actually not close enough and were worse for you than anything else you could wear because they muted the feedback you would get from the ground with too much cushioning and then didn't give you
Enough
the
cushioning.
other things you would need if you were still, running like you were in a regular shoe. But really quick, one interesting point. This whole sort of, up and down thing or up and seemingly down thing didn't happen in Europe. only happened in America. In Europe, the argument against minimalists or against natural movement had no weight because there have been a number of shoe companies that are 200 plus years old that were doing things more closely related to what we're doing. So the shoe companies, who were frankly just terrified no one was ever going to buy a running shoe again once people realized they could run barefoot, they just had there was no grip on that story in Europe because people just didn't buy the anti-barefoot, anti-natural story. They've been living it for hundreds of years.
Well, yeah, especially in Europe, which has a more traditionally like firmer platform in their shoes in general. I mean, like if you look at just like Solomon trail shoes, there's
Well,
so
not
much
so
different
not so
than a
much
lot of-
firmer platform. I mean, like if you think about Birkenstock, 250-year-old company, or Barefootwear, 100 and some odd year old company that made wider foot shape, low
Yeah,
zero drop
yeah.
shoes. There was just a bigger history, and frankly, more people who get out and just walk and hike on a daily basis than here in America.
Yeah.
I think it's weird though. I think we're some of the panic from the shoe company. We're probably jumping way ahead here, but
Whatever.
The,
We'll come back to everything.
Jump away.
There was the part where like you're even offering a product. I think the shoe companies were afraid that people would say, I don't need a product at all. I'm going to go
Absolutely.
run on grass. I'm going to go run on this completely
Totally.
barefoot. No sock, no nothing.
Yeah, they were completely terrified of that, and in fact, it's funny. Brooks has a thing they call their Run Signature program, where in theory, tell you which shoe is right for you. The research shows that it doesn't actually work, but regardless, one part of the Run Signature test is they have you run on a treadmill in socks. They very explicitly don't let you do it in bare feet because they don't want you to get the idea that you can run in bare feet. They want to have the idea that you're just taking off your shoes just to get data, but you still need socks because, yeah, so it was, well, I'll cut way ahead. We have a friend who was looking to invest in our company, and he started calling his old friends who were CEOs or VPs at multi-billion-dollar footwear brands and said, so what do you think about this whole barefoot natural movement thing? And the response from three of the people he talked to was almost identical. It's totally legit, they said, but we can't do it because it would be admitting everything we said for 50 years is a lie.
Is that basically like how Silicon Valley execs don't let their kids use iPads and phones?
Yeah, could be.
By the way, Robbie does have a tinfoil hat, so it'll pop up every once in a while.
Yeah, I'm here for all the. That is true though. Did you know that? That's crazy. Anyways, yeah. So going back to that, when you started your company, what did you like? What were the other competitors, or was anyone else doing it in the same space as you at the time?
No. The only other competitor at the time really now. Well, actually, I take that back. So Five Fingers came out in 2006, and I kept trying those on like every 6 months in the same way. You're hungry at night, you open the fridge, you don't find what you want, you close the fridge, and then you come back 5 minutes later as if it's a psychic replicator. So I kept trying on Five Fingers, and they never fit my feet. I have Morton's toes. My second toe is longer than my first, and just the shape didn't work for me. Had they fit, I probably would have never started the company. So there was that.
Oh.
And then there was a guy who's featured in Born to Run, Barefoot Ted McDonald, who similarly was selling a do-it-yourself Huarache sandal making kit. So, I mean, Ted was kind of proudly saying, hey, I'm just a one monkey shop and it might take me 4 weeks to get you your order. And I said, well, that's not acceptable. So, in fact, I emailed Ted right when we were getting started. I said, I want you to know what we're up to. And he said, emailed back saying, I don't know if I should be happy or cry. I said, you should be ecstatic because the fact that there's going to be two of us now is going to build awareness better than you imagined, and you'll end up helping more people and selling more shoes or shoe
Rising
kits than you
tide.
ever thought possible.
Yeah. A rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it did.
Well,
and it did.
yeah, it's like if you look at right now, the cryptocurrency. Like the more there are, the bigger Bitcoin gets. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned his sandals because I actually was running a 50K with Christopher McDougall, and he had the sandals on, the tie ones.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we were about the furthest place out on the 50K loop where his shoe broke down because his lace broke or whatever. So
Well, here's a funny thing about that. We had a guy who emailed saying, hey, my lace broke and I had to throw in my shoes while I was out on a safari. And I said, well, you could have, A, just tied a knot in the lace because that's how they're made, or you could have gotten any other piece of string or cord or shoelace to relace the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I sent that back. I sent that message back to his Harvard.edu address.
Oh, wow.
So, it's like what's so funny if you look at the
How you like
earliest
them
sandal
apples?
ever. Yeah, exactly. We actually got to use that for real before that movie came out.
Okay.
We used that line to fire somebody in a previous company of mine.
Oh, wow.
He did something really practically illegal, and we got to say to him, "Do you like apples?" And he was confused and said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you're fired. How do you like them apples?" So,
You pulled that line out. That's good. Oh
it's a
man.
it's a good one.
Yeah.
But again, like the earliest archaeological dig that pulled out a sandal is about 10,000 years old, and it looked a lot like some of our original sandals, and it was made with sagebrush bark and things that you turn into twine. I mean, these are not rocket science, or as they said 10,000 years ago, it's not rock science. So the thing that's fun when we were selling a do-it-yourself kit is people really discovered that, oh my God, I can make footwear. This is not complicated. The basic idea of something to protect your foot and something to hold that on your foot is just not a big deal. And that was a revelation for people.
So wait, you were
And
doing the kits as well?
yeah, so our first product was a DIY kit, and that's all we had. Variations on that for 3.5 years. We didn't have
So
our first.
potentially it could have been your shoe that was on Christopher McDougall's foot.
Could have been. Don't know.
Yeah.
And
not
you
sure.
still do DIY kits, right? Like,
It's still we still sell a lot of those because they're super, super fun. I say you're developing the superpower of knowing how to make your own footwear. And we don't obviously make a lot of money on them because they're really inexpensive. But people who get into it really get into it. It's very entertaining to watch all the different lacing styles they come up with.
Oh, wow.
yeah, nice. So, you start your company in, what is it, 2009, you said?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then you were kind of on your way, and you had a seminal moment when you went on Shark Tank in 2013. And so tell us about that, because I actually watched that episode, and
Yeah, I want to know like how you get on it, like the whole process.
oh yeah, so that too.
Okay. Well, so we started the company, and then people kept telling us, "My gosh, you should be on Shark Tank." And we're like, "What the hell is Shark Tank?" And so we started watching the show, and like everyone who watches the show, you think, "Hey, I should be on there if you're an entrepreneur."
Right.
And whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you think, "Hey, I should be one of those sharks because I'm smarter than they are." And so we knew it was a good opportunity. Then we watched we watched rerun, or what's the word I'm looking for? We watched all the episodes on YouTube. We watched all the ones from Canadian Dragon's Den, from the UK Dragon's Den. We didn't watch the original from Japan, also Dragon's Den, because don't speak Japanese. But so I sent in an application I don't remember when, not realizing that there was actually a time in which they accepted applications,
Okay.
which is usually March or April. So coming up soon. Sent in an email. Sent another email like a week later with a video that I made, and I was just about to jump on a plane to go to one of the live auditions, and we got a phone call saying, "Hey, we read your application. We'd love to chat." And they interviewed us my wife and I for I don't know, hour and a half, and this is on a Thursday in May of 2012. And they said, "We'd love to get a video from you. You have to answer like these 500 questions in 5 minutes." And it was really onerous. And I said, "Oh, no problem. We'll knock that out over the weekend." Not knowing that my wife was planning a surprise 50th birthday party for me that weekend. So she was freaking out inside. And but party went off without a hitch. I was totally surprised. We sent in the video along with a really onerous application that had to be, for some reason, handwritten. And you
I love it.
can't read our handwriting. So
Nice.
we had to hire someone from Craigslist to
Oh, that's
handwrite our
amazing.
pictures. Yeah. So they got the application, they got the video. The next step, they send you a contract. Well, sorry, the next step, they send you a contract, also very one-sided and cobbled together from all their previous shows. So there's clauses in there that aren't
Oh, wow.
hopefully appropriate, or yeah, like that we won't sue them if we die on set. So
Right.
what the hell's going to happen? They go, and that's from when we did Survivor.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so we fill out the contract, which nobody likes, but they're not going to change a word of it for you. And then they eventually called us and said, "Yeah, we want you on the show." Then they hook you up with 2 producers who help you work out that first like 60 seconds when you're doing your pitch. And then they call you at some random time and say, "We want you here in 3 days." It's like, yikes.
Wow.
And we fly out there, and then you cross your fingers because they tape more segments than they air. So you
Okay.
never know if you're going to air or when. And they give you like a 2 weeks heads up, when they say you're going to be on.
Yeah,
And
get your
then,
get your internet ready to crash.
Yeah, right.
totally. Yeah, we crashed within seconds of our airing.
Well,
That's
that was
crazy.
my thing. I was talking to Robbie about this earlier. I was like, it doesn't matter if you get an offer or not. You're getting a half an hour commercial
Right.
for your product.
Well, 10 minutes, but yeah.
Or
Well,
yeah.
So,
I mean, with
yeah.
commercials,
No,
it
no,
lasts
it
half
was,
an hour.
but I mean, it kind of, yes, you're absolutely right. And it still kind of matters because getting the Sharks to say, oh my God, I love this gives you more credibility than if they go,
Right.
I'm not so sure for whatever reason. But we still did, I don't know, like 3 months worth of sales in the week
Wow.
following
Wow.
the show. Now, 3 months worth of sales then, that's now what we do in a couple of days.
That's
That's
crazy.
awesome.
Yeah. So what was interesting about that is that on the show, I think was it Kevin that was the only one who gave you an offer.
Yeah.
And everyone else kind of like trashed, like thought you were nuts for turning it down.
Well, yes and no. Yes, that's the way it looks. So I forgot to add that they edit the thing down. So we're in the tank for like,
That's
I
what I
don't know,
heard.
40 minutes or so.
Okay.
Right. Some people are in there for hours.
Right.
And it gets cut down to like,
Oh, geez.
10 minutes or so. So every objection that you see on the show, we hit out of the park so far that at one point Robert jumps out of his chair and yells at us, "You have a perfect answer for every question." And we just looked at him kind of incredulously and went, "Yeah, it's our business."
Well, we have seen people on the show. Maybe they do it for our entertainment value. They get on there and they don't seem to understand that
Oh.
you need to make a profit.
Well, the line is this. If you look at the show, there's usually one segment of the show, one out of the 4 segments on the show, where it's someone who really should not be there yet.
Right.
And so there's one, where you go, oh, they're going to get eaten alive. So when you're in the van going over to tape, there's like 3 other companies with you, and you look around, and if you can't figure out who's the one
You're
that's
the
going to get eaten alive,
You're the
you're
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that episode, they offered you $400,000 for a 50% stake in the company, and I believe that year,
Yeah.
at that time, your annual gross revenue was $1 million, around that.
No, I think it was about 650.
Oh, wow, okay.
Or we'd done about 600,000 in the whole time we'd started the company. I think the year before was like 500 and change.
Yeah, okay. And either way, I thought it was pretty badass when you counteroffered and they were incredulous at your counteroffer of 10% for 400K, and then
Yeah.
also incredulous that you would even turn it down.
I think the word incredulous is going to be the word of this show.
Incredulous is a
three
great
times?
He
word.
said it. He said it.
Oh, okay.
We got it.
I said it. You said it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They. Well, here's another Shark Tank secret. So, talk about things they edit. My wife and I have a debate about whether my memory of what she said is accurate or her memory. So we forgot Kevin even made an offer because there was just no way we were going to take an
That's
offer
so
that was
funny.
valuing the company, at 800 grand, which was what we were going to make more than that year, and. So we forgot that he made an offer. Robert reminded us, and Lena turns to Kevin and says, "So are you bringing anything to this offer other than money?" Because we wanted someone who had industry experience and things. And he says, "Well, I'm a smart businessman. I've got a big Rolodex." And I remember Lena saying, "So nothing?"
Oh. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I do think that there is some value sometime if they're going to put in their weight behind your marketing and help
Yeah.
you do that. I could see that, especially if you get like a Mark Cuban or something that has online experience and growing companies with online sales. That can be a value beyond financial.
Here's a weird Cuban story. So I'll try and do the short version. At one point, Cuban realized he was a customer of a previous company of mine, and the whole balance of power shifted. You could see him just kind of deflate, and suddenly he was not the guy in charge, and in the same way, and he was not happy with that.
So what company was that?
I started a company. It's called Synovate. Well, the product's called Scriptware. I invented the industry standard word processing software for film and television writers.
Whoa.
Ah, cool.
That's so random. So we
It's
might
not
have to come
random if
back
you
to
knew
that.
the
We might have to
details.
come back to that
Yeah.
because it seems like a weird path. But finishing up with Shark Tank. So you turn the offer down, and
Yep.
Do you have investors now?
oh yeah, that's
Obviously
a
not.
good question because I do
We So in 2017, we did an what's called a Reg A Plus equity crowdfunding raise. So we allowed normal human beings, not just accredited investors, aka rich people, to invest in the company. We were one of the first companies doing that, and we actually were the first company to figure out how to raise money from individuals directly without a broker dealer from all 50 states. We then taught the whole
Wow.
industry how to do it. So we raised a little over $1 million then from about 1,100 people. And then in 2020, I've got to figure out the numbers, the end of 2020, we took on a private equity partner in a minority position.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So when the first part where we were talking about kind of like crowdsourcing some capital there, I've seen other companies. I think there's a jean company out of LA that was sort of doing the same thing. Where
Yeah,
do you know who I'm talking
sort of.
about?
Yeah, distilled. They did
Yeah,
the
that's
same
it.
thing. The difference is we were the only company at that time that was actually making a profit.
Okay.
So there was a number of companies that were doing crowdfunding. A number of them did it wrong. They didn't have a crowd to reach out to who wanted to fund the company and wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of these companies were pre-revenue or still,
I think
just
you need
losing money every year.
you need the evangelist, but it was a weird time period because you had the kind of like the GoFundMe crowds, you had the
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Kickstarter, you had I
Yeah.
don't know, you gave a better technical term for what this was. Can you give
Well,
me
it's
that
called
again?
crowdfunding, and there's sort of two levels. There were two levels. One if you were looking to raise under 1 million, the other if you were looking to raise over 1 million. And the rules were very different. So for ours, we now have to file our financials twice a year with the SEC. So we're an SEC reporting company. Had we raised less, we wouldn't have needed to do that.
Ah,
And we were really hoping, we like the idea of reinventing capitalism. We don't like the idea that people who believe in a company, who helped grow the company, can't benefit from the fact that they helped do that by buying product. So our plan was to just keep the crowdfunding raise open in perpetuity. So as new customers came in, if they wanted to invest, they could. But human psychology being what it was, or what it is, people weren't taking action as quickly as we thought. And so we said, all right, we're going to end this in August. And the moment we said that, like another $250,000 showed
yeah.
up. And you have to give people a deadline or they
Yeah.
just don't take action.
I mean, totally unrelated, but I really feel like this is where like NFT and stuff like that is going in a
Yeah.
way to kind of you
Well,
buy the
even
product and the
even more, we had the idea that we would just keep doing successive crowdfunding raises and let more and more people get involved and eventually do a crowd-funded IPO and go public through the crowd. The problem is, between the trade war and then COVID,
yeah.
and the fact that we were growing so quickly, we just didn't have that opportunity.
So are you guys suffering from the same thing the industry is suffering from right now? Is that manufacturing is delayed and it's harder to get product on time?
No and yes. In terms of the getting stuff made, we can get that done. In fact, during COVID, because we're a digital company, we were keeping a lot of our factories alive because we weren't selling wholesale or selling a lot wholesale. And so when the retail environment crashed during 2020, and a lot of these companies did, they canceled all their orders and we were placing bigger orders.
Mm,
So they were thrilled. The getting stuff here is the challenge.
yeah.
That's been a nightmare. And I mean, paying through the nose to just get stuff here or flying things in,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
knowing we won't make any money, but we need to have product to sell.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a
It,
crazy
it's
time.
such a the idea that companies are having to take airplanes and fill them up and get them
Oh,
over.
dude, we looked at buying an airplane. I mean,
Holy crap.
Zero
yeah,
Airlines.
yeah. I mean, and we wouldn't have the cash for it, but we looked at like what could we? I mean, we were just like everybody panicked and just trying to figure out what to do, and everything was on the table. Like, do we buy an airplane? Do we buy a boat? Do we? I mean,
Yeah.
it was just insane.
That is crazy.
Now, I think there's in the movement in the shoe industry in general is towards sustainability, and I can your shoes are natural like motion and all that stuff. Are you guys? Is that a big priority of yours, or is that just kind of like a side? If it can
Yes
be.
and again, yes and no, and neither and both. So let me start with this. I've done a bunch of rants about this. Sustainability is mostly hand waving and lies. Let's just start there. There's an article, I can point you to it from the Harvard Business Review called The Myth of Sustainability. If you look it up, you'll find it. And the gist is that when it comes to the apparel and footwear industry, the quote sustainable materials just aren't doing what people think. They're not taking carbon out of the environment. They're not using less energy to produce. By and large, there are a few exceptions. So, but mostly not. And they have a line in the summary of that article, which is less unsustainable is not sustainable.
Yeah.
And some of the things that people are doing about sustainability actually breed more unsustainableness. For example, saying, hey, you can recycle these products. Well, people think that's great, and then they try to find a way to recycle them, but only like 10%
Right.
of that stuff actually does get recycled, and
Right.
most of it ends up in landfills. But because people feel good that they can recycle, they're buying more, which
Exactly.
puts more in the landfill.
But I
So,
think that is the case. We want to feel good about what we're doing, whether
well,
whether the benefits
that's the
are.
problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. We want to feel good about what we're doing, so douchebag marketers will make you feel good about lies.
Well,
And
I
so here,
I don't know if they're
well, so here's a,
douchebags, but Allbirds,
no, they are.
like we just
Oh,
we
Jesus.
we just
Okay.
got their
Oh
shoes,
wait.
Oh
and
my.
they came in a very elaborate box with
Yeah.
like I'm like, if you really are in a sustainable, you send it not like in a paper bag or something. You know?
Yeah. So not to, speak bad of the soon to be dead. Um, the and I only say that because, their stock, it opened at 28 or so, and now it's around 7.5 or 8.
Oh, that's
But
right.
but here's the thing. Let's just say this. They're currently being sued in a class action lawsuit for being misleading and lying about their sustainability claims.
Oh, really?
Early on, they were saying, yeah.
We have
Early
to
on, they were
reshoot that
saying it's all
review.
about sustainability.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so they were saying, hey, we're using wool, so it's sustainable. But they were then flying the wool from New Zealand to Italy to make the uppers, then flying the uppers back to Korea to put them on the soles, then flying them in, like you said, the most elaborate box ever made around the world.
Well, that's
And they were,
when you said flying stuff and everything. The amount of times that we've talked to different companies and they're flying product in, they're doing this, whatever your carbon footprint was before it
you
got,
just blew it. You blew
yeah,
it.
it's like gone. But
Yeah. There was I don't remember where I saw it. It was a guy in California from Netherlands originally who like totally off the grid, everything's sustainable in his house, but he flies back to the Netherlands once a year to see his family, and that negates everything else that he's got.
but his
So,
his argument would be like, imagine I wasn't. But,
well, yeah, look,
yeah.
it's true. But so here's our sustainable story. A, we're not going to lie. We're not going to greenwash. We're not going to make things
Yeah.
up. B, the biggest thing we can do is keep things out of landfills. Look, let's do fact number 2. Everything's eventually going to end up in a landfill. Okay? So hopefully in a landfill, not in the ocean. So the biggest thing we want to do is keep things on people's feet.
Right.
So we
Right.
made our soles with a different rubber compound that we developed that we have a 5,000 mile sole warranty. Compare that to most running shoes where they say replace them every 200 to 300 miles because they're going to wear out because the EVA midsole wears
Sure.
out,
Sure.
and then you got to trash them.
Also, sell
Now
more
we
shoes.
Yeah.
well, also true, which is also reprehensible. So the second thing we're doing, we are using more sustainable materials when we can, when it's legit. So we're using more hemp canvas, for example. Leather is actually a sustainable material in a way. Cows are not killed to make leather. If they don't use the leather, it just gets burned or thrown away. So we're
But cows do
sensitive to
die.
that. We're not.
Yeah, but it's
Cows
like
do die. I
it's
mean, we're
like
not.
scrapple.
We
It's
are.
like they're gonna throw
Yeah.
that stuff out anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of what we make are vegan-friendly products, but we do have a few leather products for specific reasons. But the other thing is that we do have a new product coming out in a couple of days, actually, where the upper is almost, I think it's like 95% made out of recycled PET, recycled plastics, essentially. And the sole is treated with a material that makes it more biodegradable in a landfill. And we want to see how this performs and how it does, and then start using those materials more and more. And here's the biggest thing, really. If it turns out, because the companies making these materials are not always very transparent. If it turns out that we were snowed, that in our due diligence we thought we were doing something that was a useful product and it's not, then A, we're going to switch, and B, we're going to fess up right away. Again, transparency is like super important to us. We're doing the best we can, and if we're wrong, because human beings have been wrong, we want you to know, and we want to, and basically if we're wrong, the whole industry is, and we want people to be aware of that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I mean, I think we've had some shoes in the past where it's like, oh, it's made out of this and this, and I'm like,
We don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, like, but the performance isn't as good and as
Yeah.
the other stuff, and now I'm just not going to use it.
Like I do think we. I mean, I don't want to get too far down the
All right, yeah,
environmental
we can
train
keep- yeah.
because like we could just keep
This
going
could
and
go
going and
forever.
going. So
Yeah, we could. All right. Pick a new topic.
Well, one of the things that kind of going back to when you first started the company, I know we're going back a little bit, but I forgot to ask this. You said you didn't have any competitors at the time, but on the Shark Tank episode, you said that there was a company that was in that same space that had taken on investors, and I don't know if it was like Ultra or someone, or like if it was a similar company like that. But
I don't remember
Ultra was
who-
never.
I know they were
minimalist.
minimal, but I didn't know if they
No,
were
no,
like
they
in that
were.
natural
No,
movement.
no. Ultra started out as a minimalist company. If you want to have fun, look up the Ultra Atom shoe, and you'll see it's a super minimalist shoe.
Yeah.
And what happened with them is that they were having some financial challenges, and a company bailed them out basically. And then they controlled that company controlled Ultra and said we need to start making things with cushioning and padding because that'll sell better and not this crazy minimalist stuff. And in fact now their new owner, the VF Corporation, is going away from everything that they originally believed.
Yeah, it's
But well, not to like what's his name? Gold.
Golden.
Golden.
Harbor.
Yeah, Golden. The way that I understood it started was they started cutting out parts of the drop of the shoe, so like to make it zero drop. And then the first one was like the provision. I forget which one it was.
No, look up the Atom.
I'll look up the Atom, but I don't think that was the first one. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, what was happening was Golden's dad owned a shoe store, a running shoe store, and they were sanding off the sole. So taking something with a big drop and just sanding it to make it flat. That was
Yeah.
one of the first things they did. But when they started, their first couple of commercial products were totally minimalist.
Yeah, it's super. It was under 5 ounces with a very thin sole. Yeah, okay. It was a
Yeah.
minimal shoe.
It was kind of like now that I haven't looked at it in years, but I looked it up the other week. It was kind of like our Z-Trek sandal with an upper,
Okay.
if you look at that shoe.
So
Yeah.
so that's what I found interesting because of the whole boom in minimal running, and while you had some major players like Merrell or Adidas or whoever doing the minimal thing, there wasn't anyone else really going all in, I guess, in the way that you did with such.
No, well, not here. In the UK, there's a
Oh,
company,
okay.
Vivo Barefoot, and
Oh,
so
right,
they
right,
were
right.
doing it they were doing it before us. I mean, again, we didn't have our first closed-toe shoe until end of 2016. They started out before they were Vivo Barefoot. They were Terra Plana, and they made a kind of minimalist shoe back in, this is 2008 maybe, even earlier. I can't remember.
I think I was
And
mixing
so,
you together with Vivo, like because
oh yeah.
yeah, because I met there were you had at the time 5 fingers, and there wasn't like the first one. There were sandals and 5 fingers, and then there was like a closed toe.
Could be. We refer to ourselves as friendly competitors, and but they really weren't. They didn't really have a U.S. presence or even an online presence in those early
Okay.
days.
Gotcha. So when you came up with the closed toe shoe, was that kind of a game changer for you as far as boosting
Yeah.
revenue?
Yeah. So the way it happened is kind of from day one, our customers would tell us what they wanted next, and then we had to figure out a way to do it. So it's like the DIY sandal, hey, that's great, but I'm not going to make my own. So I came up with a way of having a ready-to-wear version of that same idea that I've got a patent on. Hey, I like that sandal, but I don't want something, with a thong thing between my toes, even though the way our lacing system works, it's not like a flip-flop. You don't get those pressure points. Hey, that's great, but what do I do in the winter or when I have to go to work? That led to the first closed-toe shoe. Hey, what about a running shoe version of that? Hey, what about a trail version of that? Hey, what about... And so most of our product development has been from the hey, what about emails that we get. And then some of it is we look at the line and see where there are holes that we know we can fill because we're basically trying to give people an option for whatever they want to do. Since once you have a shoe that's really lightweight, really flexible, lets your toes spread, doesn't mess with your posture, lets you feel the ground safely, you just don't want to go back because it just feels wrong when you can't feel the ground again or when your posture's out of whack because you have an elevated heel or your toes get squeezed together. And so we just keep being told to, do this next thing because it's another use case that no one has taken advantage of yet.
Yeah. And so obviously in your past, like you've run in quote unquote normal shoes, like higher stack
Yeah.
cushion and everything. Well, I mean, I would
Yeah.
say, you know,
Quote
like
normal.
the
Well,
general, like as far as
Like traditional running
standard
shoes.
industry.
well,
Yeah,
well, I'm going
exactly.
to pause. I want to pause because they're not traditional. The modern running shoe is a
That's true.
50-year-old invention that
That's
it was
true.
that was basically pulled out of someone's butt. It was a
Well,
made-up
Bowerman's
design.
butt. But,
No, actually, no, no, no,
okay,
no,
kidding.
not really. So, no, here's what happened. I don't know if you're old enough. The first waffle trainer was a minimalist shoe for all practical purposes. About 10 millimeters of foam, zero drop. I was 10 years old or so when I put that on my foot, and it was awesome. What happened is some guys who were in Bowerman's building, orthopedic podiatrists or sports podiatrists, I can never remember which. Bowerman said, "I'm getting runners with Achilles tendonitis. What do I do?" And these guys said, well, clearly their Achilles have shortened from wearing higher heeled dress shoes, walking around. Make a higher heeled running shoe, put a wedge of foam in there to make their Achilles more comfortable. And so that's what Bowerman did. And the shoe sold because it was some novel new idea. And the footwear industry is a bunch of copycats, not a lot of creativity. And so suddenly it kind of caught on. Now, cut to 30 years later, when a guy who I know who spent years working with Bowerman directly was at a track meet with one of these podiatrists and said, your idea is now being used by pretty much every performance shoe company in the world. What do you think about that? And the doc says, biggest mistake we ever made. He said, we made up this Achilles shortening thing. We didn't really have evidence for that. We didn't know if, the difference between walking in a dress shoe versus running was really a thing. We were just seeing everything through a prosthetic lens. So we came up with this idea, and then it just took off. And basically, in the last 50 years, every, quote, new invention in footwear is some version of that same thing, some different form of cushioning. And we don't have to get into the details, but once you elevate the heel with cushioning, it leads to every other problem that the shoes have tried to correct for. It leads to instability, so now they have to try and build motion control, which never works. It leads to excessive force on the plantar fascia and in your arch, so they put in arch support so you don't have to use your arch, which sounds like a great idea, but when you don't use muscles, guess what? They get weaker, and there's research that shows that. So I would argue, and there's research to back this up, that every piece of the design of the modern athletic shoe causes the problems they claim that it's trying to address. To the point that Nike did a study that came out a couple of years ago where they said they designed a shoe to reduce injury, as if any shoe was
The
ever designed to
React
increase injury.
Infinity, yeah.
Yeah, the React Infinity, and it says, hey, reduced injury by 52%. Which was true compared to their best-selling motion-controlled padded elevated heel
Structure.
arch-supporting shoe, the Zoom Structure. But here's the kick. In their 12-week study, where an injury was called anything that took you out for at least 3 training sessions in a row, which is basically at least a week, that was an injury. That's legit. Some of the anti-barefoot stories, they called an injury calf soreness. So different game. Anyway, in the Zoom Structure, over 30% got injured in under 12 weeks. In the React Infinity, 15% did. So 15%, let's call that 1 out of 7 roughly. 30%, let's call it 2 out of 7 just for the fun of 7 days in a week. Which restaurant can I buy you dinner at every night this week? The one that gives you food poisoning twice or the one that only gives it to you once? I mean, that study was promoted as Nike shoe reduces injuries 52%. It could have just as easily been
It gives
called Nike
injuries.
proves their shoes hurt people.
Yeah.
I mean, I will on the flip side of that though. I've been reviewing shoes for a long time, and when I was doing the minimal shoes, is the only time I know you're gonna say that it's not the same thing, but
No. I'll say it is the same thing. It's 2 things. One, what shoe were you wearing?
at the time I was wearing several different shoes. So I was wearing everything from the Saucony Hattori to the Merrell Trail Glove.
Not
to
minimalist.
to-
Not minimalist.
I never did the Vibrams.
No need.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. There's 2 points. Again, research from Irene Davis showed that a lot of these shoes that were being called minimalist were not minimalist enough. And what that means is you weren't getting enough feedback to do the most important thing. It has nothing to do with the shoes. It's all about the form, not the footwear. It's all about the gait, and it's all about transitioning properly. It's all about landing with your foot underneath you and using your muscles, ligaments, and tendons, which if you haven't used for a while. Look, if you haven't been to the gym for a couple of years, you don't go and do 8 hours of biceps curls. You go and you do a set. You wait till you don't feel sore. You do another set. When you don't feel sore, then you add some weight or add some reps. So people were transitioning improperly, and often because of the shoes they were wearing, still running with the same overstriding heel striking form, which will undeniably cause a problem if you don't have all the other protective stuff. But the last but not least point is the comparison was never made between the normal injury rate for runners in, quote, normal shoes, which is over 50% per year, 50% of runners, up to 80% of marathoners, compared to people who have adapted to minimalist footwear. And there is no research on that yet because it would cost a couple $1,000,000. And guess what? The only companies that would benefit from it are
You.
small companies like ours who don't have a couple $1,000,000.
Yeah. So like in your
So, sorry, I want to say, I'm not going to argue your point, but I want to highlight that the idea, the fact that you brought it up that way is actually showing how much control the big shoe companies had over the conversation.
Yeah, well, they do,
Because
but
none of us.
What it did was, I fractured my third metatarsal running it, and
Totally could not be more familiar.
and I attribute that to my running in the minimal shoes and not having protection under my feet. And
Here's the
okay.
thing. You're close. You're absolutely right, except you don't need the protection under your feet. You need your feet under your hips. See, that between the third metatarsal fracture, actually third, fourth, and fifth are pretty common. Not common, but if someone's going to say I got a stress fracture, that's what happens, because that's where you're going to be landing on your foot. And if you're overstriding, and I would bet my entire company that if you showed me a video of you running, you were overstriding. And so that bone is not designed to handle that force. When your arch is engaged, when you land on your midfoot underneath your center of mass, you're actually engaging the arch of your foot in a way that is freakishly strong. I never thought of saying it until now. Why don't sprinters get third to fifth metatarsal stress fractures? Almost never happens. Yeah. So they're landing on the ball of their foot underneath their body. They're using the arch. They're applying 3 times more force to their body than you are as a non-sprinter, but they're not getting that same kind of injury because the arch is designed to handle that kind of force when used correctly. When used incorrectly, totally not able to. So that's the difference. People keep confusing the footwear with the form, and that's what caused the problem and the seeming backlash.
So-
And again, no one looked at, what happens if you switch from one shoe to any other quote normal shoe. The injury rates are higher than what we were seeing in people switching to minimalist footwear.
So here's my question. Then you're saying you're overstriding or whatnot. Now, if you are you saying that if you wear minimal or barefoot shoes, minimal shoes, whatever, does your stride automatically correct? Is that something you have to consciously be aware
Great
of
question.
the whole time?
Yeah, if you took off your shoes and ran barefoot on the road, and you didn't have the idea of no pain, no gain, and you were willing to commit to finding a way to make it work that felt good, because people have been doing that since the dawn of people. And I can introduce you to hundreds of thousands of people who run in bare feet on roads enjoyably for hundreds of miles a week. I mean, we had a guy, our first customer service guy, ran 150 miles a week, and the only thing under his foot was 4 millimeters of rubber from our first sandal. And he was 65 years old. No
That's
problem
crazy.
ever. So if you get enough feedback, the simplest thing I can say is doing it wrong hurts, doing it right feels good. And if you use that as a gauge, your gait will change. I did research in the lab with Dr. Bill Sands. He was former head of biomechanics for the U.S. Olympic Committee. And we just took shoes off people's feet and had them running on his massive treadmill. 90% of them switched to a midfoot strike underneath their body without any intervention whatsoever. The other handful that didn't needed about 30 seconds of coaching, and then they did too. If you put anything else under your foot that's adding more, quote, protection, or more accurately, reducing the amount of feedback you get from the ground, the longer it can take. And last but not least, everyone's got a different neurology. Some people are better at hearing that message from their body and making changes than others. And so for me, it took one barefoot run with a big blister under the ball of my foot, and then a second barefoot run to try to figure out how to run without causing what clearly caused the blister.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was done. I mean, it was literally, that's how long it took. It was a 9-day period, and my gait changed permanently because I'm just good at picking up new movement patterns. And I've basically been, I went from 2 years of almost nonstop injuries to I can't remember the last time I had an injury in the last 12 years.
Wait, that's what my next question was going to be. Since you personally have started running in your shoes, basically, have you
or barefoot.
Have you had injuries that have put you out for more than a week? That is
No. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to everyone.
Yeah.
Because,
No, I
weird
mean,
shit happens.
Right.
Sometimes muscles don't fire in the right order. You step on some weird thing. There's no, I mean, I've gotten two injuries. I got the same injury twice. I stubbed my toe twice.
Oh, okay. How like
And not running while walking.
what does your running look like? Like what kind of runner are you? I know you do sprinting,
Well,
right?
I'm a Masters All-American sprinter. So I do road stuff and hills and trails just for training, but I'm mostly on the track.
Okay.
And I'm doing, short distance stuff, but
How
very high intensity.
how many miles a week do you run?
Miles? What the hell? I don't know what a mile is.
Meters, kilometers.
Yeah, like if you're a sprinter, not including warm-ups or cool down time where you'll put in a couple miles, an actual sprint training session is, somewhere around 1 to 2K tops.
Gotcha.
Because I'm a 100-meter runner outdoor, 60-meter indoor.
Yeah.
So the thing as a sprinter, you just want to be able to run as fast as you can with every session you do, with each run you do. So if you're doing like more than 10 by 100, I mean, that's a heavy workout.
Right.
Especially if you're going for speed. A tempo workout, 10 by 100 is not a big deal, but for speed, 10 by 100 is a lot of volume.
What made you go back to sprinting? Because I feel like it's the complete opposite. As people get older, they tend to do more longer distance running than like
Slow twitch versus fast twitch
Yeah.
muscle.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's, sprinters are born, not made. And so if you were a sprinter, I know very few sprinters who've become successful distance runners. But it wasn't that I had a choice between sprinting and, quote, running. I just never was a runner. It was never enjoyable and I wasn't good at it. But I was always a sprinter. So when I heard about it, a friend of mine said, there's a whole Masters track and field circuit. And I went, what? And it just was the happiest day of my life.
we were talking about injuries and barefoot running and how to transition
Yeah.
into a gait or a stride. What I was wondering is, do people I think one of the deterrents to running in barefoot shoes is that people don't want to throw away their entire
Don't.
life or
Don't.
shoes or
Don't throw it away.
everything.
Don't do it.
Okay.
Don't. Oh, no, I'm serious. So look, let me. I should have done this earlier, and my apologies for being stupid. But it's a Friday morning, and my brain is not working. So here's the thing: stay in your normal shoes. Do not change. I don't care if you change. I have no interest in you switching to minimalist footwear for everything you do. None. But check this out. Dr. Isabel Sacco did some research where she gave runners in, quote, normal shoes an intervention over the course of about 8 weeks, I think. And that intervention, and I'll tell you what it is in a second, reduced their chance of injury by 250% over the course of the next year. In other words, the people who did this intervention or better yet, the people who didn't have this intervention, 2.5 times more likely to get injured than the ones who had the intervention.
Okay.
So what's the intervention? Foot strengthening. They did a foot exercise program to strengthen their feet.
Really?
And that made them less likely to be injured by 2.5 times. Quick aside, we have a professional ice hockey player who says she's playing better than ever and skating better than ever because she's wearing our shoes off the ice when her feet are totally bound up when she's on the ice. Which brings me to my next point. Dr. Sarah Ridge, she showed that just walking in minimalist shoes like Xero Shoes, she didn't use us for the study, but said our shoes should give the same benefit. Just walking in minimalist shoes builds foot muscle strength as much as doing a foot exercise program. So I'll admit, there is not a study showing that if you just walk in our shoes and you're running in normal, quote, normal shoes, you're reducing your injuries by 2.5 times. But I'm going to, because no one's done that study,
Right.
but let's do the math. Stronger feet, fewer injuries, walking in minimalist shoes, stronger feet. You figure out what's on the other side of the equal sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just,
okay.
do things to strengthen. The most important thing that you have in your body when you're running is your feet. And when you have arch support, another piece of research from Katrina Protopappas, putting arch support in the shoes of healthy individuals reduced their foot muscle strength and size by up to 17% in 12 weeks. So you're doing things that weaken your foot. And this is not rocket science.
Right, yeah.
Use it or lose it.
Sure.
Support a joint, it gets weaker. Use it, it can get stronger.
Yeah.
So
Like my mind is social
running
media.
whatever you want to run in. Walk around in these,
Yeah.
and then maybe if you want to try running, just start really slowly and like going to the gym, build up slowly.
So do you think, I mean, I think I'm going to know your answer, but do you think foot strength has the same equal, I don't know, weight in the running equation as does, say, hip and glute strength? Because a lot of times when we're injured, we hear strengthen your hips, strengthen
Hip
your
and glutes. There's a really strong connection between those two. So what you'll see with people who have weak glutes is two things very commonly. What's called vastus valgus, their knee turns in because one of the functions of the glute is to turn your femurs out. And so if
Guilty.
your knees are, yeah,
Yeah.
well, so that's a glute strength thing. And there's some easy ways to fix that. And if you put your feet on the ground and you do tighten your glutes so it makes your femurs turn out slightly, but you leave your feet planted, you'll see that it creates an arch in your foot. So, and vice versa, if you build up the arch in your foot, it also goes up into your glutes and changes the way your glutes and your hips work.
So what are those exercises, like arch exercises or some things?
If you do a search for BYU, Brigham Young University, and foot strengthening exercises, I think you'll find everything that Sarah Ridge did in her study. And I have the ones that Isabel Sacco did in hers, and I'm turning that into an ebook, so I'll have that soon.
Cool.
But they're pretty straightforward exercises that anybody can do. It takes a few minutes a day.
Okay.
You know, from our perspective, we're addicted to some, like, I'll speak for myself. I'm addicted to the shoes and the technology and the thing. I would find it difficult to, you know, when we talk about like review, it's got to be tough to review minimalist shoes because they're pretty much, I mean, upper changes, right? I mean,
Well, I don't know. I'll send you some. You can tell me.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I'll say is, again, don't think that it's not the shoe, it's not the form, it's not the footwear, it's the form.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing to think about. And the next important thing to think about is, because of that, you don't want to just switch cold turkey.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was a study that, it was an anti-Vibram study. It's like, these people got injured. It's like, you told them to switch cold turkey and you never
Right,
looked at the
right.
form.
Oh,
The hell?
that
I
is
mean,
one of the questions I
you
want
know,
to
you-
ask you. What does that look like transitioning into a barefoot shoe?
So this is one of those things where humans, and for some reason I'll include myself in that list, we like simple answers. We like a step-by-step thing, but it's not so simple because we're all unique little
Sure.
snowflakes. So the basic
Robbie's
idea
a
is,
snowflake.
if you want to run, yeah, if you want to run barefoot, for example, just as an idea, you want to go find a smooth, hard surface. It's going to give you the most feedback. It's the most fun. If you can find like a freshly painted white line on the side of the road, that just makes people like me misty-eyed. And then you want to do a short run, 20 seconds. You see how you feel the next day. If you feel just a little muscularly sore, wait till you feel better. Do that 20 seconds again till you're having a good time. Just basically, if you're not having fun, do something different till you are. You can spot a barefoot runner from 100 yards. They have this weird look on their face called smiling. And so if it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel like you want to keep doing more, make some changes till it does, which means getting your feet underneath you, picking up your cadence a little bit so you're more steps per minute but not running faster, and just a few extra steps per minute just to play with that. And then once that feels good, add 10 seconds. When that feels good, add 10 seconds. When that feels good, add 10 seconds. And then when you could do 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is, then just start building that into whatever your weekly training regimen is. So do a little barefoot or minimalist at the beginning and then switch out if you want. Or do one day and then add a half a day. I mean, the way I like to think of it is this. If you break your arm and it ends up in a cast, when you take the cast off, you have two choices. Just keep supporting it and do nothing, or take some time to build up some strength that you can then use for the rest of your life. This is the same idea. If you've been keeping your feet weak by not letting them function naturally, by squeezing your toes together, by messing with your posture, does it not make sense to do something that might make you healthier, again, like Isabel's research, less prone to injury for the rest of your life by just taking some time to build up strength the same way you would do if you got your arm out of a cast? Of course, it makes sense. So that's the way you want to think of it. It's just like, give yourself some time. Don't think I've got a marathon in 6 weeks. I want to make sure I can run it barefoot.
Yeah.
You're ready when you're ready, not a day before, not a day after. Just give it some time. And again, if you use fun and enjoyment as your guide, you can't go wrong.
Gotcha.
If you're sitting there, really goal oriented, there's a high probability you'll do something that gets in the way of making that natural transition.
Right.
And again, there are a lot of people that I've met who call themselves barefoot runners who've never had their bare feet on the ground. I'm not suggesting that you go barefoot. I mean, you don't have to do that. That's why we have a shoe company. But you want as much feedback as you can. Although we often say go barefoot. I mean, what we say, barefoot is better when barefoot's not appropriate. That's why we make what we make.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure you're not getting a shoe that's called Barefoot or called Minimalist for just marketing purposes without being legitimately so. And that's the annoying thing that I see is people trying to get on the bandwagon, making something that, hey, it's flexible. Yeah, but it's still 2 inches thick. Hey, it's lightweight. Yeah, it's still 2 inches thick. Hey, it's
Right.
so you got to be careful.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Anything
that covers
else?
it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, seriously, I know a guy who knows where the truck is parked. He can get you some shoes.
Yeah, I'm interested. No, for
And
sure.
again, the goal is really just play with them, put them on, take them to the gym, walk around, see how you feel. At some point, I guarantee, as little as I know each of you, I guarantee you're going to go, wonder what happens if I go run a quarter mile.
No, dude, I
I mean,
run
see what
in.
happens.
I know it's again probably not technically minimal, but every once in a while I'll run in my Tevas, like just a little bit. It feels fun. It's nice.
Definitely fun. Definitely still way too thick.
Yeah, Teva's
We'll
got
see.
20 millimeters on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah, no, we'll
it was
do
the thinner
version 2 of this after you. Yeah, we'll do version 2 of this after you've got some stuff on your feet and.
I mean,
see what
I
you
think it
discover.
would make good video content.
I would be definitely willing to at least like go on hikes and like the stuff I do with my kids and family. Like,
Oh, yeah.
try them out.
Well,
He's-
and again,
he's going to
same thing with
Pennsylvania
hiking.
this week.
Yeah, too late.
Well, it's the same thing with hiking. When you're coming down a hill, get your feet underneath you. Don't put the brakes on by overstriding
Right.
when you're doing that.
Yeah, I bet you lost your. Did you ever see that Hoka trail shoe with a huge heel on it?
Oh my
I
God!
bet
What
you
the
lost your
hell?
mind when you
10-9.
saw that.
What the hell?
Oh man,
Yeah.
that was a wild one.
There's room for play on both sides. I think, it's fun to have some outrageous equipment on all sides.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't get me started.
Steve's like, Steve's like, we'd have another hour. All right. Well, it was good talking to you, dude. I appreciate you. Obviously we running a lot of shoes that have way higher stack and cushion. So I do like hearing, the other side of the coin as far as viewpoint and, running shoes and whatnot.
Well, I'll just say this about the other side of the coin. I was on a panel discussion at the American College of Sports Medicine against some guys from Brooks and Adidas, and they kept saying, well, we want to improve performance and reduce injury. We just can't, haven't gotten a study to do that because it's really expensive and time-consuming and difficult. It's like, dude, if you could make a shoe better than the guy sitting next to you and prove it, that's worth billions of dollars. Don't tell me it's just hard and expensive.
Right.
But there was actually a better point that I was going to make about that. Oh, I kept asking them for every time they made some claim. I said, well, where's your proof? And there isn't really any. But if you start diving into the research on natural movement, what you find is just study after study after study after study about using your body the way it was designed is better than not.
Yeah.
Again, it's use it or lose it. I call it the dumbest science in the world because do we really have to prove that it's better to use your body the way it was intended versus binding it up and not using it?
It's like Occam's razor, man. The most logical.
Yeah.
solution.
Totally.
Yeah.
Robbie's
Anyway.
favorite.
That's my favorite because everybody
Well,
ignores it.
I don't want to be incredulous, but there we go. Money word of the day. I just made another $5. Everybody do a shot every time you hear incredulous
I'm
on this
into it.
podcast. All right.
All right, Steven. Thanks for
got
coming on. Appreciate
pleasure,
it.
guys.
All right, buddy.
All right, talk to you
Thanks.
soon.
All right.